Hello, greetings, and welcome to Awaken Age Revealing. This is Doug Michael. The topic for today's segment is There is no oneness. And ladies and gentlemen, one major hurdle that was difficult for me to overcome in the progression of my perceptual cognition was the idea, that everything is one. It's all one. This proclamation of some all-knowing, all-wise universal consciousness overseeing its creations has abounded throughout many mystical teachings through the centuries and has deeply infected the New Age arena. This idea is the ultimate collectivist ideology. The idea that we are all connected to some universal, all-encompassing consciousness discounts the truth of the matter that we are individuated consciousness, each unique in our expression, experiences, and vibrational energy signature. I, too, have fallen into the trap of believing that we are all one consciousness that has fragmented itself into countless parts so that it may learn about itself. However, upon scrutiny of this notion, it really makes little sense. I mean, think about it. If it were all just one, then the moment a mistake was made, this universal consciousness could simply correct the imbalance by learning through its mistake. And if it's perfect and all-knowing, why would it make mistakes in the first place? Certainly, it would know not to. Mistakes are repeated over and again, so you would think this oneness would get the lesson and move on. Why does an all-knowing, overarching consciousness need to learn anything? It already knows. Why would it need to experience its creation? Surely, if it's all-knowing, then it knows all experience. Why would it need to evolve? Again, if it's all-knowing, why is it striving to know more? If it already knows everything, then what more is there to know? Phew, you can really give yourself a migraine headache contemplating this stuff. Now, even though the ego is a selfish entity, it seems to love this idea of placing some consciousness or another above itself. It's the Big Daddy syndrome on steroids, God the Father, or the one true creator, or the universal consciousness, and whatever other permutations this idea takes on. I see this as a way that the ego relinquishes responsibility, right? If something goes wrong, just blame it on God. If something goes right, give the credit to God. It's dependency on a grand scale. It's God's will, says the ego-controlled consciousness that has abdicated its own will. This attitude reminds me of the troubled teenager who blames all of his life's ills on his parents, never taking responsibility for his own fuck-ups. I always get a kick out of watching athletes praying for a victory. Now, it's far less funny when soldiers do it, but I digress. You watch the athlete, doing his Hail Marys or other prayer rituals, asking for victory from the other team with members that are doing the same thing. Is the team that prays harder awarded the victory? Maybe it has more to do with what this God has writing on the game, God is a Jets fan, but he won't be answering their prayers for a victory today because he wants to beat the point spread. Of course, I'm just joking here to illustrate how ridiculous this whole externalization thing has gotten. Human beings have been so deeply conditioned to project outside of themselves, laying either credit or blame on some nebulous deity that will either ignore you or answer you based on its whims or whether or not it's had its morning coffee yet. The latest God concept among New Age types is simply the universe or source. The universe this, or the universe that, or ask the universe and it shall be granted. First of all, which universe? There are multitudes. And why would the universe give a shit anyway? Surely the universe has better things to do, what with, managing galaxies and such, than to cater to your desires. Instead of projecting all of this energy outwards, why not internalize it and realize that it is the arrogant ego that seeks all of this attention from some unknowable outside source? See, this works well for the ego because if it fucks up, it does not have to take responsibility, or it just wasn't meant to be. I had no say in it. It was God, or the universe, or divine consciousness, or Hathor, the mystical unicorn god of the seven rays. This goes both ways with the adolescent ego. It also seeks to always credit some damned external deity or entity of some kind with any achievements made. Oh, thank God, or the universe aligned the stars in my favor to make this happen. Look how special I am. The ego loves to elevate consciousness above itself and equally to push other egos down to give itself a false sense of being elevated. It is a neurotic basket case. It can never accept the notion that it's on its own and that progression is based on personal, individual effort, and that it is not going to be handed to you by some god or the universe simply because the ego wants it. This externalization is the height of dependency. As I've claimed in my earlier presentations, the ego is a very small aspect of the psyche, so it very effectively convinces you that you are small by convincing you that it is you. The ego seeks something greater outside of itself because while it's running amok over our minds and emotions, the true magnitude of the self, the spirit, is suffocated under the ego's neurotic whims and machinations. The ego is a prisoner of all kinds of irrational fears, but its greatest fear is that it's on its own, that it is responsible for itself, that Big Daddy or the universe or Source has abandoned it. Now this is spelled out perfectly in Endall Beall's book, Willful Evolution, where we read, "What the ego part of us fears most is that there is not some ultimate entity at the helm of creation. It shudders at the thought that this might all be a cosmic free-for-all where every consciousness is ultimately responsible for its own actions, conscious development, and its own evolution. I'm here to tell you, folks, that's the way it is, and the sooner you accept it, the stronger you will be in your resolve to become something better and greater than you are." It is never the ego consciousness mired in first cognition belief systems that strives to advance in perceptual awareness. It is the spirit that pushes for greater understanding, that is, in those whose true self has not been completely suffocated under the weight of the ego. The ego strives to be accepted, right? To be a part of the herd. And this is glaringly demonstrable with the belief of a universal consciousness of which we are all a part. It is the ultimate herd mentality on a cosmic scale. Because of this deeply ingrained ego desire to be a part of, to fit in, or be accepted, the consortium and its inorganic allies have manipulated this flawed and quirky aspect of the psyche to no end, through religious and mystical traditions, cultural ideologies, and bogus so-called spiritual trappings of all kinds. "We are all one" is the ultimate expression of collectivism, willingly embraced by the fearful ego within its own self-perpetuated cognitive prison. The question arises, where did we come from? Material science, in its abject obsession with finding the answer to this great mystery, seeks to reduce physical matter to its most basic core building blocks to find this answer, and it will always elude the materialists. You have to wonder if the highest intelligence in the entire cosmos even knows the answer to that question, and I'm willing to bet that it doesn't. Besides, what is truly more important, where we come from or where we are going? Why not just be in the mystery and move forward? Material science, mired in the first cognition and all of the arrogance that goes along with it, is spinning its wheels, trying to figure it all out, searching for the God particle, smashing atoms, searching for the start of it all while the world falls to shit. As if the answer would ever reveal itself to egos that will just seek to place it within tiny little boxes of definitions and categories. The ego cannot even begin to contemplate the notion that there is no beginning and there is no end. Why can so few stand within the knowingness of "I exist" and seek expansion from that point of perceptual awareness? The answer is because most exist within a level of perception that is finite and completely lacks the cognitive awareness to accept the premise that it simply is. Meanwhile, The spirit waits ever patiently, knowing at its core level that it is infinite and eternal, existing in the ever-present moment of now, unlike the ego, which is continuously projecting itself into a past that is dead and buried, or a nebulous future that does not exist. The new paradigm of the future is created in the here and now through individual effort and willingness to willfully evolve one's own conscious perceptual awareness and the action taken to manifest it into reality. The ego would rather place its faith in some idea of a universal consciousness that it believes will hand it evolution on a silver fucking platter. No. It must be earned through constant and deliberate intent, effort, and action. Evolution is a willful act, and this scares the living shit out of the ego, mired within collectivism and a vague sense of false oneness. In embracing the rainbow, the danger of stubbornly remaining within the first cognition is spelled out. The situation on this planet, as confusing as it is to comprehend, is as it is. It is important to grasp the reality and the seriousness of the consequences of its continuation, but the focus of importance is on creating the change. It will not be found through continued observation of the imbalance, but in placing the focus on what is desired to replace it. There is no other way to move through it and into what is desired. Again, it is important to stress the need to accept that the belief systems now present within the mass awareness of the planet have not led humanity out of its dilemma. These have mired it more deeply than ever in the situation now leading it to the lowest ebb yet of the human experience. If it hasn't worked in the past and it doesn't work now, then it is time to accept that, open the belief system to different ideas and ponder their truth rather than reject them without consideration. This is a profound observation. The statement within this passage that the current belief systems embraced by the masses has only caused humanity to sink further is astoundingly obvious. Has the belief in oneness led humanity out of its dilemma? No. Has the belief in some creator God done so? No. Has the belief in some magical ascension process done so? No. Has the belief in benevolent space brothers coming to guide or rescue mankind done so? No. Have the channeled messages of love and light espoused by the defunct New Age movement done a damn thing to lift humanity up out of its cognitive quagmire? No. Have any of the currently held belief systems born of first cognition and rigidly held onto done one fucking thing to move human consciousness forward? Let me think. No. The reality of the situation is that humanity needs to adopt an entirely new cognitive perspective if we are to ever throw down the perceptual chains that bind our consciousness as a species. This shift in cognitive perspective is the absolute responsibility of each individual to initiate and to follow through with if we are ever to step into a new paradigm of human experience and human awareness. Each individual's effort and willingness to be a part of the evolutionary process is what will ensure the creation of something new that facilitates advancement and encourages and supports it. The stubborn refusal to take on this great challenge will only continue the downward spiral into oblivion, which is glaringly obvious if one is honest and simply looks around at the mess we have allowed to flourish all around us through willful ignorance and refusal to accept responsibility. The time is here and now to consciously move forward, that is, unless you prefer being a slave. Sadly, many do, because it is just far easier, and the ones that do are simply sealing the fate of their own destruction. In Book 3 of the Handbook for the New Paradigm Trilogy, a book titled Becoming, there is a passage that is very hard-hitting with regards to this idea of some external deity and where it came from. The record of advancement, insofar as humanity on this planet is concerned, is a checkerboard of dark and light, or positive and negative experience. As an overall composite, from the point of view of a spiral of upliftment, the results are dismal to say the least. Whatever help has been given has been convoluted and shamelessly diverted into disinformation. What has been intuited has been hidden or destroyed, and those gifted humans imprisoned or killed. Mankind has been purposefully held in mental, emotional, and spiritual captivity. The age-old question arises as to why God allows this to happen. Here again, we face the fallacy of what God has been represented to be. The question is addressed to an outside supreme being that holds power over each individual life expression. It is the transfer of the awe held long ago when beings of apparent superior status brought forth the human in partial likeness of themselves for the purpose of exploiting their physical forms in slavery to an all-knowing superior being that promises benevolence but seldom provides it. In other words, this God, with the expected power to control all things, does not now and never has existed. This passage is very deep. It hints at the constant dance of duality existent within the realm of the first cognition. It also relates how second cognition human beings who have tried to teach their fellow humans are taken out of the equation. Humanity has been enslaved since its genetic manipulation by off-world intelligences in the distant past and by manipulation of inorganic intelligences posing as God or ascended masters. When Don Juan told Carlos Castaneda that they gave us their mind, he was talking about the ego program that has infected human consciousness since its creation as a slave race. The vast majority of human beings are scared to death of actual cognitive freedom. This would end the dependency on God or Source or Ashtar fucking command, and it would demand total impeccability and absolute personal responsibility. Dependency upon anything that lies outside of oneself is slavery. Dependency upon anything that lies outside of oneself is slavery. You know, many of the slaves in the 17 and 1800s were willing to remain under the control of their masters because of the fear of what true freedom and autonomy would bring to them. Just as the vast majority of the colonists prior to the formation of the U.S. had no problem remaining as subjects under the yoke of the British Crown. This dependency factor is so deeply ingrained within human consciousness, be it in the form of a god, a government, a guru, or a belief system, that it is impossible to escape for a species mired within the first cognition of ego restraints. A cognitive shift in perceptual awareness is required, and this can only be accomplished through a massive and willing deconstructive process initiated by the individual. There is simply no other way to be free. Therefore, you must decide and you must act. Do you wish to remain within the illusory comfort of ego consciousness under the bondage of tyranny, or do you prefer a new paradigm of actual freedom, wherein the inhabitants operate in the spirit of cooperation with the intended goal of progress in conscious advancement? It's a choice that no one can make for you, certainly not oneness, whatever the hell that means. We hear all the time that love is the answer, right? Lovey-lovey, lovey-dovey, lovey-dovey, love. Love is the answer. Now, this word is perhaps the most misused word in the entire English language. Coming from the first cognition ego perspective, the cheapened ego version of love is not going to solve a damn thing. New Age proponents think they are going to love their way out of the prison. Just bring in the vibration of love and all will be sunny and sparkly and magic, and all the evil in the world will disappear, and we'll fly on unicorns through bright rainbows, and we'll all just get along. Oh, shut the fuck up. You know, I make a joke out of it, but many people actually believe this nonsense. I've heard some, and I have over my years, and I'm not making this up, ladies and gentlemen, I have heard some New Age types actually make the claim that we should project love onto the evil ones because they are in the most need of it. Well, let me know how that works out for you. You know, do you think this ridiculous notion of love is going to stop the mugger from sticking his knife in your gut? Do you think projecting so-called love is going to stop multi-conglomerate corporations from dumping their toxic shit into the ocean? Hey, if we project love onto Europe, will that stop the cultural war that is occurring there? If we give love to the global manipulators, will it prevent them from launching their next war? Will love clean up the toxic radiation in the Pacific Ocean and prevent the sea creatures from dying in droves? Why not love yourself and others who are actually deserving of it? Yeah, and that's not elitist, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to just throw your love around unconditionally, well, good luck. If you survive that shit, come back to me. Let me know how it worked out for you. Save it for yourself and those deserving of it, right? Evil is not deserving of love. It simply sees it as a weakness. If it is deserving of anything at all, it's punishment. Now, if this harsh truth strikes a nerve within you, well then good. The only oneness that exists is not anything external to yourself. If anything, oneness is the sum total of your parts and different aspects. You are one unto yourself. We are each individuated consciousness, responsible for ourselves and our own advancement and evolution. It simply cannot be any other way. Before I end this segment, I'd like to take the time to reveal something to my listeners and subscribers. A short while back, I was contacted by an author who uses the pseudonym Endall Beall. He was long familiar with my work and felt a push to contact me. Needless to say, I was skeptical at first because I get contacted by a lot of people, many of which seem to have an agenda. This was different. We began an information exchange which quickly evolved into lengthy phone and Skype conversations almost on a daily basis. I got my hands on all of his books, and I've read just about all of them by now. I was intrigued because here was someone who had noticed many of the same things that I had and was able to communicate it very effectively. He was saying so much of what I wanted to say, but was struggling, to convey. I was convinced that this was a person who had indeed reached a higher level of perspective that I had been striving for, and he assured me that I was right on the edge of what he called a cognitive rollover. The push over the edge for me was dealing with the oneness concept presented in this presentation. Endall and I decided that we would work together in mutual cooperation with the common goal of bringing information forward to assist in an advisory capacity those striving to advance their own cognitive awareness who could envision the conceptual idea of a new paradigm for human experience. The results have been astounding to me. In just 3 short weeks, together, we produced almost 20 video presentations and a full-length book to act as a compendium study guide for the information we are presenting, titled The New Paradigm Transcripts, Teachings for a New Tomorrow. It's simply amazing what can be accomplished when stupid little ego agendas do not get in the way and the spirit of cooperation is adhered to rather than competition or, one-upmanship. Although Endall and I are both fiercely independent, we work together towards a common goal with mutual respect, and again, the results have been monumental. It is both of our sincerest desire that this can act as an example of what can be accomplished when operating from a point of understanding beyond the ego. When spirit is in the driver's seat, absolutely amazing things can be attained. This is what is going to be necessary to achieve the new paradigm that Endall and I have been outlining in these presentations and in the book. Absolute respect for each individual expression, and yet working together in cooperation towards attaining a common goal. Do we necessarily agree on every point? Well, no, but when we unite on what we do agree upon, the results are incredible. It's such an awesome experience having someone in your life who is no longer operating in first cognition to share your experiences and conversation with. It is like a breath of fresh air. I had detached from the herd a long time ago and had absolutely no problem walking alone if that is what it would take to advance my own awareness. Knowing that there are others out there who are walking the path is very refreshing, comforting, and inspiring. You may be lonely, but you're never alone. My longtime listeners know that I focused a lot of my attention on pointing out the problems that are facing humanity and exposing aspects of the tyrannical control paradigm, its machinations, and some of the forces behind it. For a while, I wanted to transition into shifting the focus more towards examining solutions and a way out of the mess. I knew what I wanted to say, but had a bit of difficulty knowing, just where to begin. After exploring Endall's work and having many hours of intense conversations with him, it all fell into place. It was like I was hit with a tidal wave of information, insights, and ideas that were waiting to be tapped into, and it hasn't stopped. Now, the intensity has settled down a bit, but following that cognitive rollover, everything has changed. Looking at the world through a second cognition perspective, you can plainly see it for what it is. Basically, a giant cacophony of bullshit. Endall is not my guru. I have no friggin' gurus. I must say, however, that his work is among some of the most advanced that I've read in the last 20 years, and I'm an avid reader. Here was an author who had effectively demystified so much of the mystical nonsense that has been force-fed to the cultures of the world. Here was someone who was conveying the same message that I was striving to. Again, what we've been able to accomplish in such a short time has left me blown away, and we're just getting started. In the near future, I will be interviewing Endall, and it should be quite an interesting and intense conversation, so stay tuned for that. Ladies and gentlemen, I extend my gratitude and my heartfelt thanks to any and to all that consciously strive to advance their cognition and open their mind in search for the truth. Thank you for giving me your time today, for listening to Awaken the Age of Revealing. This is Doug Michael, and until next time, walk in peace.